The Rangers lost one Jakob this offseason, but they gained yet another, Jakob Junis, signing a one-year deal with the Rangers. Talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covered this team for 12 seasons, including all 7 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Jakob Junis signing a one-year deal with the Texas Rangers, why it's a lot more than I thought they'd spend on any reliever left on this market. And we're going to talk about the international signings for this Texas Rangers class. Before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Now, the Rangers made news this weekend on Sunday, signing yet another bullpen arm, Jakob Junis, to a one-year, $4 million deal, according to MLB.com's Mark Feinsand. Now, Jakob Junis is a guy who very much fits the Rangers mold of reliever as of late, a guy who does not throw hard, limits hard contact, and does not strike out a whole lot of guys, but still finds ways to get outs and to prevent runs. That is what Jakob Junis does. He is not a guy who is going to be throwing 99 or 102 or 105 or anything close to that. His average fastball velocity last year was in the 10th percentile of Major League Baseball, averaging at just 91.1 miles per hour, which has just really been a trend for this Rangers bullpen as of late. It has not been something that the Rangers have been, it's just been their plan for the bullpen the last couple of years. Basically under Chris Young, when they have gone, low on their budget for relievers, they have not typically been able to go play at the top of the market, aka the guys who throw 101, 102, who are, notching down saves all the time. They've gone for guys who are more of the soft tosser, soft contact. And with the Rangers defense last year, that strategy worked out pretty well. The Rangers defense isn't going to be as elite this year. I don't think they're going to win a team gold glove like they did in 2025, but I still think this is going to be a good defensive club overall. So I kind of get the strategy. What really blew me away is not that they signed Jakob Junis. Jakob Junis last year with the Cleveland Guardians, a 2.97 ERA in 66 2/3 innings, 55 strikeouts, a 1.23 whip, and an average exit velocity in the top 15% of baseball. Same with his barrel percentage within the top 20% of baseball. Doesn't walk guys, doesn't give up hard contact, gets a decent amount of ground balls, doesn't strike a whole lot of guys out, and doesn't get a whole lot of swing and miss. And that's kind of been the Rangers' MO for their bullpen. Now, his expected ERA was right around league average, quite a bit higher than his actual ERA. Expected ERA a little bit north of 4, where his actual ERA was a little bit south of 3. In 2024, he also had a sub-3 ERA, a 2.69 ERA in 67 innings. Also had 6 starts, 1 save, and 24 games pitched. A little bit more of a swing man in 2024. But last year, more of a traditional reliever, which is, I think, the kind of role that the Rangers will use him in. He'll be more of a low leverage guy, and it really didn't take long for me to be wrong, at least not perfect so far. He could end up getting hurt and not making the opening day roster, and I still could be 26 for 26 on my opening day roster projection version 1.0 that I did on a Friday show. But I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be off in this one. Jakob Junis was very healthy last season. He's pitched quite a bit of innings the last couple of years, 66 2/3 last year, 1 out more than that at 67 innings in 2024, and then 86 innings in 2023. A little bit more of a starter in 23 and really more in 22. He was a starter for the first couple of years of his career with the Kansas City Royals, making 16 starts his rookie year as a 24-year-old back in 2017, 30 starts and 31 starts in 2018 and 2019. made 6 starts in 2020, and then kind of started shifting into more of that swingman role in 21 and a little bit in 22 as well. Though most of his starts in 22, most of his outings were as a starter in 22 with the San Francisco Giants, was there for a couple years in 22 and 23, then spent time in 2024 between Milwaukee and Cincinnati, and then last year with the Cleveland Guardians found a role in their bullpen as more of a low leverage guy. Now, he is very, very good at getting righties out. The slider is his primary pitch against right-handed hitters. He was mostly a sinker slider guy, has a changeup that he uses more against lefties than he does against righties. It's actually his primary pitch against left-handed batters. He throws it 38% of the time against lefties, becomes more of a uses four-seamer a little bit more against left-handed batters than against righties. But 4 pitches, slider, sinker, four-seamer, changeup, that is what you get with Jakob Junis. And the one that he uses the most is the slider, 44% of the time overall, 83 miles per hour, a lot more side-to-side movement than it has up and down movement. So that really shows you why he is throwing it a lot more against right-handed batters. It is jumping away from right-handed batters versus lefties. It is going more into them as a kind of sweeper. The Rangers, as a general rule, have been kind of against sweepers, not saying explicitly to not throw them, but definitely not encouraging their players to throw sweepers because of Dr. Keith Meister and the premier elbow surgeon in the world, who is the Rangers team doctor, has shown that some of these designer pitches, like a sweeper, they put a little bit more stress on the elbow and can lead to some more injuries. So some of their guys who had thrown a sweeper, mainly John Gray, who is a slider first kind of a guy, he had that more sweepery action. He tinkered with it and made it a little bit less sweepery. Still found some success with it being more of a traditional slider. Hopefully put a little bit less stress on his elbow, but last year it was not stress on the elbow that caused him to miss so much time. It was, I guess it was a fracture in the elbow for him. I can't remember specifically where it was in spring training last year that kind of derailed his season. But I'm more surprised that Jakob Junis, who had a good season last year, I mean, a sub-3 ERA, decent peripherals, but not a hard thrower. Usually the reason the Rangers go with some of these soft tossers is because they don't cost as much money. And him signing a 1-year, $4 million deal, when I believe it was $5.5 million that it cost to bring back Sean Armstrong, I don't see why this was the case. If you're going to bring back a guy on $4+ million deal, if $4 million is fine, I don't see why 5.5 for a guy who had a better season was that far out of range. Now bringing in a Phil Maton who cost $7 million a year, fine. I get that makes some sense for sure. But I thought there was definitely some room in the budget for either that or bringing in a Rob Resnider, who made $6.25 million, is making $6.25 million to play for the Seattle Mariners and would have been, ideal on your roster. Sean Armstrong, signed a 1-year, $5.5 million deal with the Cleveland Guardians, basically just a swapperoo for this Rangers squad. And he's making the most of any Rangers reliever at this point, with $4 million going to both Chris Martin and Jakob Junis. I am surprised that he garnered that level of a deal. The Rangers spending that much on Junis. Maybe they're believing in him in some high leverage spots, because if you're paying him the most in your bullpen, which is not that much by reliever standards. I mean, there are plenty of other relievers that are making more money. Kirby Yates is making $5 million this year. So it's not like it was a massive jump, but also a little surprised Howie Milner is making just $250,000 less than this $4 million. But still just a little surprising with the kind of roster building that the Rangers have had, that Jakob Junis is the guy who gets $4 million. I think he's solid. I think he's fine. It's not ideal. I still would really like the Rangers to have gone after Sean Armstrong. I think he's probably going to have a better season than Junis, and he pitched in much more high leverage spots and have much better numbers. And for $1.5 million extra, I don't see why there was this big a difference in bringing back a guy who also, wanted to come back. Sean Armstrong wanted to come back, but Junis, I think, is fine. He's fine, but it's also going to necessitate a 40-man roster spot. Coming up, we're going to look at this 40-man roster, who could be the roster casualty for this move, and we're going to talk about the Rangers' international prospect class and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. The wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day to see what boost you want to apply. The boost let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you even more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost packs to go for even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Shout out to Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. Be a part of the Everydayer Club, your first listen and the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. Go check it out. There's all kinds of different perks. There is an ad-free version of the show you can get access to. There is a members-only Discord. You can chat with me about what's going on. I'll give you updates on what's going on, what my thoughts are on different Rangers moves as they happen. Go to lockedontexasrangers.supercast.com to go check it out and learn even more about the Everydayer Club. Now, the Rangers made a move for Jakob Junis, and that is going to require yet another move on their 40-man roster, because right now the Rangers are at 40 guys on their 40-man roster. I do think there might just be one more move coming for this offseason. They have signed now 4 relievers. I think they need to sign at least one starter, at least one guy who's going to give you depth in this rotation, because as of right now, the starting rotation looks good if nobody gets hurt and everybody makes all 32 plus starts this season. But that doesn't really ever happen. And so I think the Rangers will need to sign at least one starting pitcher. I kind of prefer them to sign one bona fide guy and then one guy with some upside who, might deal with some injuries or might just be stuck in AAA, just some kind of organizational depth, because right now behind the #5 starter, there's not a whole lot of depth. All that to say, there will be multiple moves, I think, made on this 40-man roster. All the guys who are here right now, I don't know how much longer they will be here throughout the rest of the season. And I think the most obvious roster casualty, at least to come off first off the board for this move for Jakob Junis, I think it's Willie McIver. Right now, Willie McIver is the 3rd catcher on this Rangers squad. The Rangers have some other guys who are some depth options behind Danny Jansen and Kyle Higashioka, who they could call up. Jose Herrera is the main one. McIver, he can go through waivers. If the Rangers lose out on him, fine. I don't think that's any big earth-shattering move of losing out on a guy who is not going to be your starting catcher, is not going to be your backup catcher, is going to be your 3rd or 4th option even. I think Jose Herrera might even be a better option to come up and replace Jansen or Higashioka in case of an injury for a couple weeks or a month or however long those guys might happen to be out, or just to give them, to spell them for a couple of days in the option that both these guys get a little worn out towards the end of the season. So I think MacGyver is the most likely move, although I'm not sure if the Rangers are at their limit right now for pitchers on the 40-man roster. There are a couple guys who are possible candidates to get the axe. I don't think it's going to be anybody who they have signed to a major league deal this offseason. So that leaves out Tyler Alexander. I don't think that they're going to put David Davalillo out there, who is one of their top pitching prospects. I don't see any of these really Rangers prospects who just got added to the 40-man. I don't see them getting axed off the 40-man roster. But I think that some of these guys who are waiver claims, Dom Hamill and Zach Kent specifically, it might be a first in, first out type of situation, or maybe Michael Otanez ends up being one of the first ones out. But I think of this group right now, if you had to take one pitcher and just say, hit the road, we're good, we're fine, we're not going to really take a flyer on that, I think it would probably be Dom Hamill. But it's possible that it's Zach Kent. Zach Kent has a similar kind of a profile to Jakob Junis, a little bit less, actually significantly less big league success and big league experience than Jakob Junis. Maybe the Rangers are going a little bit more, veteran heavy, which has kind of been their preference for the last couple of years, at least in the bullpen for sure, possibly probably because the last couple of years they just haven't been cranking out guys who have been, back in bullpen staples. They've just gone for guys who, have underperformed elsewhere and found different little tricks and tips for their either their arsenal or their delivery or whatever it is. The Rangers have done a good job of finding guys who have, been in the big leagues for quite a while and haven't quite performed up to their personal standards the last couple of years, and turned those guys into successful big league arms. But I think Kent and Hamill are probably the most likely guys to get the axe if the Rangers make another move. I think MacIver has got to be the first man off this 40-man roster because, again, he's a third string catcher, and you don't really need to carry three catchers on your 40-man roster. Other hitters who might be on the chopping block, I'm still a little surprised that Justin Foscue has a 40-man roster spot. He has gotten not a whole lot of time at the big leagues the last couple of years. He just kind of feels like a quad A player. He doesn't have a defensive position. He is basically a DH or maybe a first baseman or maybe a not great defensive second baseman. Maybe you put him out there in left field, but he's a guy who was brought on to mash against lefties. And so far in the big leagues, his numbers have been horrendous. They have been pretty horrendous. And it's not a tiny sample size. It's not a huge one, but it's not nothing at this point. I mean, it's been multiple years, but in the big leagues, he's got 51 at bats and he's got 3 hits in that span. 3 hits and 51 at bats is a .059 batting average, a .094 on base percentage, and a .192 OPS. A sub 200 OPS in 50 at bats is not nothing. It's not nothing. It is not great either. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers just cut him off the 40-man roster at some point this season, depending on, what moves are made. I'm surprised that he is still on it at this point, to be completely honest. This is not to just crap on Justin Foscue. He might end up being a decent big leaguer one day, but, for a guy who seemed like such a safe pick to be at least an okay big leaguer in that 2020 draft, it's wild that the guy who was the safest pick is the one who might end up having the least success at the big league level, at least the guys who have gotten there so far. I mean, the Rangers in that 2020 draft, they had some incredible picks, namely Evan Carter in the second round of that draft. They also had Thomas Saggese, who has done a pretty decent job as a big leaguer for the Cardinals, a part of that massively important Jordan Montgomery trade back in 2023, as was Tekoa Roby, who was, I believe, the Raiders' 4th round pick in that draft. He hasn't quite made the big leagues just yet. I'm pretty darn sure he will at some point this year. And I think he'll be a solid back-end rotation starter. So of those 5 guys, I can't remember. I know that their 5th round pick has not made the big leagues. Dylan McLean, he is still, I believe, has yet to make it to AA at this point. Maybe he won't end up making the big leagues, and so Foscue will be the 4th best Rangers draft pick in a 5-round draft. But still, him being such a safe pick back in 2020, and so far very much not working out is a little surprising. But I don't know how many more years you're going to keep him on your 40-man roster while putting up very, very, very bad numbers at the big league level. Now, maybe he changes that this year. Maybe he comes into spring training, he looks amazing, and he wins a job at a camp, and he becomes the Rangers DH against left-handed pitchers and just crushes lefty pitching at the big league level. I don't think that's likely. It's not impossible, but definitely not something you want to bank on. And so for that reason, I think MacIver is probably the 40-man roster move for this corresponding move. But after this, I wouldn't be surprised if Foscue or Kent or Dom Hamill are the moves responding to whatever move the Rangers make next, assuming that they do make any more moves. But enough about those moves. I want to talk about some international free agents. Too many big leaguers we're talking about right now. I want to talk about some youngsters who are very, very, very far away from the big leagues. We have no idea if they're even going to make the big leagues. But I want to talk about who the Rangers sign and more right after this. Now, the Rangers agreed to deals with several international free agents on January 15th. Truly one of my favorite days on the baseball calendar. Now, it's not super significant to those of you who only pay attention to the major leagues, or even those of you who are casually following the minor leagues. January 15th is a life-changing day for many youngsters in the Dominican Republic, in Venezuela, in Panama, all across Latin America, this is a huge, huge day because that's the day when teams can sign international prospect. Now, technically, it can be any international free agent. It could be from Japan, it could be from Africa, it could be from Europe. I mean, it could be anywhere besides the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. I think no, Mexico still is included in the international signings as well. Groups as well. So, but mainly these guys are coming from Venezuela. They're coming from the Dominican Republic, a few from Panama, a few from Colombia, but for the most part, it's the DR and Venezuela. And so this day is the day that the Rangers can sign these guys to these big life-changing deals. As much as I believe the Rangers had $6.6 million in their pool this year to sign everybody. And this year they got a couple of interesting guys, two of them in MLB Pipeline's top 50 international prospects. The first of which is Elian Rosario, the ranking number 10 prospect in this international class. They also had Frondel Pineda. Yes, he is related to Michael Pineda. That is his uncle. He is the number 47 prospect in this class. He is also a right-handed pitcher, just like his uncle. I'm going to start with Elian Rosario. Rosario is a guy who signed out of the Dominican Republic, East Santo Domingo. He is an outfielder, or maybe he's a third baseman, depending on who you talk to, according to reports from MLB Pipeline. He's 17 years old, listed at 6'2", already and 195 pounds. He is a guy who is going to be a masher. He's going to rely on his bat. Already got some good arm strength, so maybe he's got the footwork to stay at third base. If he does stay in the infield, that's probably where he's going to end up. Maybe it'll be in a corner outfield spot because he's got an arm that is big enough to play in right field, according to some of these reports. The power tool is by far his best tool. Also has really, really high grades for his makeup of wanting to get better at the little things in his game. A guy who hits very well as of right now. He wants to work on some of his pitch recognition, identifying breaking balls, identifying off-speed stuff, and just having better plate discipline in general. But right now, he is a very, very physical guy, a great athlete, and who knows if he ends up sticking in a corner outfield spot or if he ends up sticking in the infield. We'll see many, many years on down the road, but he just turned 17 back in October. He's going to be 17 for the entirety of the season. I'd imagine that he starts in the Dominican Summer League. We'll see how much run he gets. We'll see what kind of production he's going to get. He's still, all these guys are very, very, very far away from making the big leagues, and we honestly have no idea how good any of these guys are going to be for probably 2 to 3 years minimum, but really it's going to be 5-6 years on down the line before we really truly know how good any of these guys are. But still an exciting day for all these youngsters, getting that life-changing money and getting an opportunity to chase their dreams of becoming a big leaguer. This is a guy who I'm really excited about. We'll see how far Elian Rosario goes this season. He's probably going to spend the entirety of this year at the Dominican Summer League. That's just kind of the way things go for these guys who are 16, 17 years old. Usually it's not until they're 18 or 19 that they come stateside and we start to see them in the Arizona Complex League or really even in full season ball. Most guys, they are not Sebastian Walcott. They do not start every day as a shortstop at AA Frisco. That is not the norm, or 19. That is not the norm for guys to make it all the way to AA before they turn 20, especially guys who are this far away, this, young and unpolished. There's still a lot of room to grow for these guys, but I'm excited to see what the future holds. Let's talk a little bit about Frondel Pineda, a right-handed pitcher who is also 17 years old, also listed at 6'2". He throws pretty well so far. He's got pretty decent velocity for a youngster, sitting in the low 90s, 92 to 93, touching as high as 95. Now, usually it is more position players that are signed, at least ranked in these top 50 free agent classes, because it's easier to project out who's got more physical tools. It has more to do with the position player side than it does with the pitching side. There's a lot more fine motor things and things that are just harder to, project out. Projecting, looking at a 15-year-old as a scout and saying, oh yeah, this guy is worth, $15 million. Sometimes some of these deals are agreed to earlier, and then you guys have to wait until they turn 16 until you hit January 15th of the year that they are 16 or 17, depending on what time of year they were born, and projecting out how good they're going to be. It is a very, very, very difficult thing. And so that's why a lot of these guys that are, signed, that are in the Rangers, top 30 pitching prospects, they're not guys who signed these massive deals. You look at Winston Santos, you look at Jose Corniel. Neither of those guys signed big old bonuses coming out of the Dominican Republic. They signed more modest deals. David Davalillo, I believe, signed for around $10,000, $25,000. It was less than $100K, and he is one of the Rangers' top pitching prospects. It is much harder to project out these guys who are pitching at age 14, 15, 16 than it is for guys who are hitters. Now, still, even sometimes they still get it wrong. I mean, the Rangers have done a decent job of developing international prospects. I mean, they gave quite a bit of money to their number one prospect, Sebastian Walcott, coming out of the Bahamas, and that has so far looked like a pretty darn big success for how well he has done so far in his minor league career. But again, he still haven't even made the big leagues, and we have no idea how good Sebastian Walcott is going to be at the big league level. So again, all these guys are still so incredibly far off, and it's going to be quite a while before we figure out how good any of them truly are. But I do want to list off the names of all the guys that the Rangers signed in, where they come from. Elian Rosario, the third baseman from the Dominican Republic. Jesus Chavez, a center fielder signed from Venezuela. Ariel Abreu, shortstop from the Dominican Republic. Santiago Ramirez, catcher from the Dominican Republic. The Rangers have a couple of catchers in, actually a trio of catchers in this class. Luis Jaquez, a shortstop from the Dominican Republic. Fernando Pineda, the guy who I was just talking about, the right-handed pitcher from the Dominican. Harley Fernandez, a right-handed pitcher from Panama, the only Panamanian in this Rangers international class. Jesus Flores, yet another catcher. He is from Venezuela. Carlos Dunn, spelled Dunn, I believe pronounced Done, a shortstop / center fielder from the Dominican Republic. Victor Rodriguez, center fielder, Venezuela. Also, you'll notice that a lot of these guys are at premium positions, whether it's a pitcher. It's basically all guys up the middle. There's not a whole lot of guys who are listed as first baseman or corner outfielder or third baseman, because usually you start at the premium defensive position and then you work your way to a corner outfield spot as you get higher up in the minor leagues or to the major leagues eventually. Let's see. We are at Carlos Done, and then Victor Rodriguez, center fielder out of Venezuela. Jose Cordova, a right-handed pitcher out of Venezuela. Roneker Narvaez, a righty out of Venezuela. Christian Semenyo, I believe. I'm totally butchering some of these pronunciations. My apologies to Christian, a shortstop out of the Dominican Republic. Cesar Mateo, shortstop / center fielder from the DR. Franker Benitez, a catcher from Venezuela, the last catcher in this list. David Diaz, an infielder from Venezuela. Victor Gonzalez, an infielder from the DR. Luis Sedano, an outfielder from Venezuela. Santiago Rivas, outfielder, Venezuela. And Francisco Coronado, an infielder from Mexico, the only Mexican signed player in this class. So that is the Rangers international class. Best of luck to all these guys. A sincere congratulations to all of these young men and their families for this life-changing opportunity to go pursue their dream of being a big leaguer. And I'm hoping that we're talking about a lot of these guys come next year, come 2 years, come 3 years of, wow, what a great international signing class the Rangers had in 2026. What a bunch of young stars or potential role players in the big leagues these guys could end up being. It is going to be a long way before any of these guys make it to the big leagues, but still a very exciting day for these young men and their families. Truly a life-changing day on the baseball calendar, unlike pretty much any other, besides maybe draft day. But even then, this is still something very, very special. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.